Hi there, welcome back for chapter 3 of You're a Bad Man, Mr. Gum. When we left it, Jake the dog was running riot and the fairy was getting her wicked way with Mr. Gum. And Mr. Gum had decided to have a very nasty plan. So chapter 3 is called Mr. Gum Lays His Plans Like the Horror He Is. The next morning, Mr. Gum was in the butcher's shop. The butcher was a scrawny old man called Billy William the Third, and no one knew what the third bit meant. I reckon he was in prison when he was a youngster, and his number was number 3, said Jonathan Ripples, the fattest man in town. Maybe it's because he's the third nastiest person in town, said the little girl called Peter. Tell you what I think, said Martin Laundrette, who ran the laundrette. When he was a young man, he was probably in prison and, hey, said Jonathan Ripples, stop stealing my ideas. Shut up, said Martin Laundrette. Why don't you just go on a diet? Of course, Billy William III had his own theory. It's because I'm actually royalty, he would tell anyone foolish enough to listen. I'm third in line for the throne of England after all those other geezers. He always pronounced England in this way. Other words, he said in a funny way, were hospital, fountain, and funny. Nobody believed Billy William the Third's story about him being royalty, except for Billy William himself, and even he didn't believe it most of the time. But he enjoyed lying. It made him laugh. Not a nice laugh like you or I would do, but a sneaky old laugh on the inside when nobody else could see. Anyway, forget it. The important thing is that Mr. Gum had gone into old BW the Third's butcher's shop, which is what they called Billy William the Third, right royal meats. And he'd gone in to buy the biggest load of meat he could get his angry hands on. He had a plan. I've got a plan, he told Billy William. Next time that whopper of a dog comes a playing on my lawn, well, you better watch out. That's all. My plan is the best. Are you going to be laying all that meat down and poisoning it so that when he's barking, he'll fall down dead? Guessed Billy William. Maybe I am, said Mr. Gum, a little annoyed that the butcher had guessed his plan so quickly. That there is Billy William. He had been looking forward to explaining his plan in detail and impressing Billy William with the cleverness and how bad at heart it was. Talking of bad heart, said the butcher, here's £3 of it. It's been sitting out in the sun since last Tuesday. That ought to poison him, no mistake, Mr. Gummy old slipper. Why did you leave it sitting out in the sun? Said Mr. Gum, taking the horrible sloppy bag from the disgusting butcher. I like watching the flies go mad over it, laughed Billy William. They're funny. You see, that's how he pronounced funny. It's the funniest sight in the whole of England. I laughed so hard I nearly had to go to the hospital. Well, thank you, my old gobbler, said Mr. Gum, handing over some money so that Billy William would later discover that was made out of lies and broken promises. And with that, he left the shop. Out in the high street, Mr. Gum remembered that he hadn't been nasty to anyone for over 10 minutes. He looked around for any children who might be playing or just walking or anything. It didn't really matter what they were doing. Even reading a book would be just fine. Just some children that he could be nasty to. But there were none to be seen, so he went and bought a newspaper. He opened it up at a photo of a 10-year-old boy who just won the world record reward for secret burping. This'll do nicely, said Mr. Gum, and he scowled at the photograph all the way home, hardly even looking where he was going. At one point, he tripped over a stone, which made him feel like the burper was somehow beating him. But that only made him scowl even harder. You see, I've won again, he said with a proud smile, which he quickly turned back into a scowl. Back home, Mr. Gum locked all the doors and windows, even the broken ones. Then he sat down to think on the old sailor's chest which stood in the front hall. It was a beautiful old thing made of mahogany, which is a type of old wood called mahogany, and it was carved all over with amazing scenes of life at sea, of waves and whales and tall ships. Mr. Gum had owned the sailor's chest for over 40 years. He had never once taken the time to appreciate its beauty. There it is, like a treasure chest, look. What's more, Mr. Gum had never once thought to open that beautiful chest and see what was inside. Had he done so, he might have been a very different story indeed. It might have been Mr. Gum's chocolatey adventure. Because I'll tell you something, that old chest had once belonged to a sailor called Nathaniel Surname, the hero of the high seas. And one Tuesday long ago, he saved a Spanish village from being destroyed by a terrible pirate called Kevin. And as a prize, the village had presented Nathaniel with the chest, which was absolutely stuffed full of chocolate. Not just any old chocolate, mind you, but special chocolate made up by the dolphins of the region. And it might be just legend, but someone said that it was magic chocolate with fantastic powers, and they always whispered when they said it, which is why it's written so small. How the chest ended up to be in Mr. Gum's house, nobody knows, but there it had stood for over 40 years, unloved and unopened. As a result, Mr. Gum had never discovered Nathaniel's sugary treasure, which just goes to show and prove that angry people always miss out on their rewards. They are also busy sniping and griping that they never see the good things around them. As the famous song says, all written in lyrics, look. You've got to have eyes for the lovely things in life. You've got to have eyes for the horrid and the bad. How are you going to get? I said, how are you going to get? I said, how are you going to get the chocolate you deserve? And the chorus goes, yeah, 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 yeah. You've got to have eyes for the amazing stuff and joy. You've only got eyes for old walnuts filled with spit. How are you going to get? I said, how are you going to get? I said, how are you going to get the chocolate you deserve? Guitar solo, and then ostrich noises to fade. That doesn't sound like a famous song to me. So it was that Mr. Gum found himself sitting on the sailor's chest, a fortune of what may have been magic chocolate in terrible ignorance, and he was sat there hatching evil. How do I know these cows' hearts are going to be rotten enough? He asked himself presently. I'd better try eating one myself. And if it kills me, then I'll know it's rotten enough to kill that old big woofer. And he took a cow's heart out of the bag and he opened his mouth wide. This is one of the craftiest things I've ever done, he chuckled. And he raised the smelly, greenish red meat to his lips. I'm a very clever man. Mr. Gum was just about to bite when he realized this might not be a clever plan after all. He put the heart back in the bag and thoughtfully scratched his beard. Not the beard that grew on his chin, but the spare beard that grew on the wall that he used for scratching from time to time. In the end, he decided to soak the rotten heart in rat poison just to be sure. It can't fail, he cackled. Old Dogger is in for a surprise that he won't like at all. Chapter 3 is over.